Muppet RaceMania for the original PlayStation is a really neat little racing game from the year 2000, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. Yes, really. But it's a game with a lot of weird oddities and mystery behind it. I think a lot of people don't know that this video game exists, so being as obscure as it is, nothing surrounding it is all too well documented. So I guess by default, it's up to me. Welcome to the Muppet RaceMania Iceberg. If you haven't seen one of these before, the top of our iceberg is a lot of the surface level information on the game, basic features, and well-known unlockables. As we move further below, we descend into the depths as the trivia gets more obscure, as we dive into beta and cut content, strange Easter eggs, lies written right on the game case, and whatever other weird glitches and just things I could find worth talking about. Things like Fozzie Bear's ghost, Animal's perfect English, Gonzo's shirt, the New Zealand conspiracy, Lego Star Wars grapes? I felt like I was losing my mind writing about some of these. This game gets weird, but I did my best to explain everything, as silly as everything is. I had to track down every video game I could find that has ties to this one, old magazines featuring screenshots of cut content, as well as tons of old beta footage, and even took a trip to Florida to see what RaceMania secrets were under our noses here the whole time. I also reference a few websites throughout where I found some information, and links to all of those will be in the description. If you like this weird little video, consider subscribing, and if you hate it, please write a 300-word essay pointing out all of my flaws as a human being. Without any further ado, please enjoy the Muppet RaceMania Iceberg. Three game modes. Muppet RaceMania features three main game modes. Races are what you'd expect. Get to the finish line before the others while driving through tracks based on areas from the 6 different Muppet movies at the time. Stunt levels are more single-player focused. These are long obstacle courses, and the game almost turns into more of a 3D platformer, but in a car. And then Battle Mode, where everyone is put into an arena with the goal of being the last Muppet alive. You can use items to hit each other, jump on top of players, or ram into them. There are some sub-modes within these main 3, but we'll talk about these later. Adventure areas. In Mario Kart 64, there's a level called Royal Raceway. There's a section where you can drive off the track and explore the outside of Peach's castle. There's no reason to go here, it's not a shortcut, it's just a dead end. It's just sort of a neat little area off the track to drive around. Every single racetrack in Muppet RaceMania is like this. These levels are massive, with so many weird corners, turns into completely empty rooms, breakable objects that lead into bigger completely empty rooms. There are a bunch of legitimate secret shortcuts, but there are also ridiculously large areas that are just dead ends. These are areas meant to be explored in the game's Adventure mode. Here, you freely drive around the level and find hidden objects for unlockables, like a 3D collectathon. And all of these gigantic levels are just built into the backgrounds of these racetracks, which is awesome. If you're playing this game for the first time, I can see how it would be very easy to get lost. You take one wrong turn, you're in a place that you're not supposed to be because it's not even intended for this game mode. As for me, after playing this game for over 2 decades, I don't really have issues getting lost anymore. Hidden Muppets. Starting the game, you only have 8 Muppet characters to choose from: Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, Gonzo, Animal, Beaker, Rolf, and Rizzo, with 17 additional characters to unlock. In the Adventure mode, if you find a Muppet and beat them in a race, you'll unlock them and their vehicle. One thing I always liked is how they tried to pick levels that fit the character. Robin the Frog is at the swamp, Bunsen Honeydew is in Muppet Labs, Chef is at the diner, or for some Muppets that were only really prominent in one of the 6 movies represented in the game, they'll just put them on one of those levels. So Pepe is on Cape Doom from Muppets from Space, and Bean is on Rooftops from Christmas Carol. There are some weird ones though. Clifford is in London, Zoot is in the graveyard for some reason. They didn't have a perfect spot for everyone. Playable bosses. Instead of unlockable characters, Battle Mode has bosses. These are the same as regular battles, but with tougher opponents who aren't playable in the main game, including characters like Sweetums and Beauregard to name a few. When you beat them, you can technically play as these guys, but only on their specific level. They sadly aren't playable on races or any battle levels outside of their own. Memory card screens. The memory card screens in RaceMania are pretty funny. They took this clip from Muppets from Space and put images of a PlayStation 1 memory card over them. So there's a bunch of different images of Muppets just looking at memory cards. It's really funny. The screen also shows icons for other games you have saved on your memory card. I always thought this was fun to see on here. Strange Pork. Dr. Julius Strangepork, or as I called him as a kid, the Pig, will appear on screen when you press the select button. This is sort of an auto control that moves you forward and keeps you on the course to make steering through levels a bit easier for beginners, or for very small children, aka me when I first played this. He's not a playable racer, this little icon is his only appearance in the game. According to the manual, this was a device invented by Dr. Strangepork because Captain Link Hogthrob, who is a playable character, thought the game was too hard and ordered him to make it easier. A fun bit of Muppet RaceMania canon for you. Muppet Show Intro. For the next couple entries, I want to talk about the handful of unlockable levels in the game, starting with Arches, the only unlockable battle course. While almost every other level is based on the movies, this is the only one based on the original Muppet Show, more specifically the show's opening theme song, even more specifically, the version of the opening from Season 2 onwards. It even plays a remix of the theme song, and this is actually the only song in the game to reference actual Muppet music. Another neat bit of trivia, the Muppet Show's theme song was remixed for 2 different Muppet video games for the original PlayStation, both released in the year of 2000. Muppet Monster Adventure also featured a version of this song, though it is a very different take that was made to fit the spookier monster vibes of that game. Outside of the Arches level, there's also the Meet the Muppets menu, where you can take any of the characters for a test drive, and this whole area was also inspired by the show's opening. It's pretty cool how much love they show the original series in this game that released around the Muppets Tonight era. Fraggle Rock. The only other level which is based on something other than the movies is Fraggle Rock, another Jim Henson television show, which is kinda weird, but for a few reasons. This is the only non-Muppets, kinda Muppets thing referenced in the game. No Sesame Street, not even Muppet Babies, just Fraggle Rock. The show had ended over a decade before this game released, and its only ties to the main Muppet stuff was a crossover Christmas special from the 80s. I don't know how it's here, I don't know why it's here, but this is easily the coolest secret in the game. Each level also has a hidden doozer in the adventure mode that you'll need to carry all the way to a portal. If you rescue all of them, you'll unlock Doozer as a playable character and unlock Fraggle Rock as a racetrack. For the most part, it's just a colorful underground course, but there's a few nods to the show, like these bridges that look like they were built by the Doozers, and even the Gorgs show up. Wow, that's terrifying. The End. There's an unlockable option in the menu called The End, which is just needlessly ominous. The End is what they call the credits, but even the game's secrets have their own secrets. There's a handful of races and battle levels in here played from a top-down view. These aren't based on anything, they don't have unique movie clips or adventure content, they mostly just reuse assets from pre-existing levels. This is just a really cool final secret at the end of the game, right? The final secret? Sure, just don't look at the video's runtime. We've reached the end of the very top level of the iceberg. That's most of the surface level information and most of the common secrets the game has, but there's still a whole lot more to go, and it only gets weirder from here. Disco. The true, very last unlockable level in Muppet RaceMania is Disco. While every other unlockable, including characters, levels, and even the end, can be unlocked using cheat codes found in the game's manual, Disco does not have a cheat code, so you're only seeing this if you legitimately 100% the entire game. Which my family did when I was a kid, and then I accidentally deleted our save file and I didn't see it again for like 10 years after that. Anyway, this is the only level that's a battle race by default. This is unlockable for any race level. You still have laps, first to the finish is the winner, but every player has a health meter like battle mode. So you can be the first to the finish by default just because everyone else is already gone. Playable results. Alright, this is the last unlockable level we have to talk about. When you win a race tournament, you'll unlock the level Studio, and winning a battle tournament gives you the Arches level we talked about before. If you don't win, you'll still get a little tease of these levels on the tournament results screen. And on both of these levels, you can actually see these platforms where the tournament results take place, but they're sadly too out of the way to actually reach. Muppet Monster Adventure. Earlier I mentioned another game, Muppet Monster Adventure. This is a 3D collectathon platformer where you control Kermit's nephew, Robin, as you try to save the Muppets who have all been turned into monsters. And the game also just plays like Spyro the Dragon? It's a really cool, really weird game, but a story for another day. Anyway, I mention it here because in the US, these two games, for some reason, released within 1 month of each other. This was not the case in Europe, where RaceMania released about half a year earlier. But with their shared release window, a lot of advertising was also shared between the two. There was a commercial showing off both games, a couple magazine ads, my favorite of which being the one where Kermit's wrapped up in a PS1 controller. What a weird time this was. Doozer's real name. As mentioned before, you rescue Doozers from Fraggle Rock throughout the game, and getting all of them unlocks Doozer as a playable character. This isn't just a generic Doozer though, this is the character named Flange Doozer. He even says so on the Meet the Muppets screen.
Flange Doozer at your service!
But for some reason they shorten his name to just Doozer, which normally wouldn't be weird, but they don't do this for any other character. Johnny Fiamma, Floyd Pepper, every other character is called their full legal name, and I don't really know why they didn't do the same for Flange Doozer. Clifford's glasses. Another strange character oddity, Clifford's lack of sunglasses in the game. In Muppets Tonight, Clifford didn't usually have sunglasses, this was normal for him. In his only movie appearance at the time, Muppets from Space, he always wore glasses. There's a loading screen where he has them, on the back of the game box he has them. His special move is literally putting sunglasses on everybody. As a kid, I don't think I even knew he had eyes. I was so scared when I saw this. This is only really notable because 90% of this game takes inspiration from the movies. And for some reason, they decided to go with his Muppets Tonight appearance. The only other reference to this show, as far as I can find, is Pepe's outfit in this stock image on a loading screen. Technically, Muppets Tonight is Clifford's most notable appearance, but this isn't really the look that he's known for, so it's interesting that they decided to go with this one. Manual is written by Muppets. The game's manual is written from the perspective of the different Muppets characters, which is hilarious. Kermit talks about inserting the game disc, Miss Piggy explains the controls, Sam the Eagle has 5 entire pages talking about each of the menus. I always felt like this game had a lot of genuine passion put into it, and that carries over to the instruction book. Honestly, it's worth tracking down a physical version of this disc just for the manual. Mallory Gallery Paintings. The level Mallory Gallery from the Great Muppet Caper is a big art museum full of paintings. A couple of these you can go inside of in the adventure mode, but most are just here for show. And several of these are actually based on real-world paintings like the Mona Lisa and American Gothic, just to name a few. But they replace the subjects in them with Muppets. This is such a fun little detail that normally you'd only see out of the corner of your eye while driving past them. Speedrunning. Like just about any game, there are speedrunners who have worked to optimize the game to be beaten as quickly as possible. The current world record speedrun of every track in the A and B tournaments is 18 minutes, 3 seconds, and 50 milliseconds. If you have any interest in this game, I highly recommend watching the full thing. High-level Muppet RaceMania gameplay is incredible to witness. This is what a fully optimized playthrough of Swamp looks like. You don't even have to play the level, apparently. Composers. I want to take a moment to talk about the composers for the game's music, Andy Blythe and Martin Joustra. I hope I'm saying those right. Because RaceMania has a lot of fantastic music. They did music for several other licensed family games around the same time, including A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, and Finding Nemo. A lot of these movie tie-in games from the era had kind of generic music a lot of the times, but their work is definitely one of the exceptions. A Bug's Life for the PlayStation 1 did not need music this good, but it's incredible that it has it. They would also later work on the music for the Furchester Hotel in 2014, a Sesame Street spin-off show. It's so cool that the composers for a Muppets video game would come back to work on a full Muppets production over a decade later. Toy Story Racer. Traveler's Tales would go on to release Toy Story Racer in March, just 5 months after releasing Muppet RaceMania in North America. If you played RaceMania as a kid and wish that there were more games like it, I highly recommend Toy Story Racer. Even though it's Muppetless, it's the same developers, and I think this is as close as we're ever getting to any kind of a sequel. It's not quite the same, but it scratches a similar itch and captures RaceMania's frantic feel. Disney Speedstorm. While Toy Story Racer comes close to RaceMania's gameplay and overall vibes, maybe it's not enough. Maybe you simply can't race without the Muppets. There wouldn't be another opportunity until 2024, when Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy were added to Disney Speedstorm, a free-to-play, live-service Disney racing game featuring characters from a bunch of different Disney-owned properties. I thought it would be fun to show off these characters and compare and contrast their appearances between both of these racing games. I was wrong. Like I said, this is a free-to-play live service game, meaning I can't just buy the full game and play the characters. I also can't just buy any character that I want. So I spent hours grinding this gacha game in the hopes of getting Kermit the Frog shards, and then eventually Kermit and Piggy just appeared in the store for a limited time, and I had to spend an amount of money that I wouldn't like to disclose here to unlock them. Anyway, they have absolutely nothing in common between these two games, aside from, like, the colors of their cars are sorta close. They have completely different special moves. In RaceMania, Kermit uses lily pads, and Speedstorm he uses his banjo. They don't even have the same voices anymore. Instead of RaceMania's Steve Whitmire as Kermit and Frank Oz as Piggy, we have Matt Vogel as Kermit and Eric Jacobson as Piggy. It is sorta cool to see a completely different take on these characters and a completely different kind of racing game. Speedstorm also has crew members. These are little character tokens that give you buffs, and a lot of the RaceMania cast make cameos here, including Scooter, Pepe, Robin, Sam, Rolf, Rizzo, the boss character Sweetums, and Foo-Foo, who actually doesn't appear in RaceMania at all. A lot of the big Muppets like Fozzie, Gonzo, and Animal don't appear as tokens, so there's a solid chance they appear as characters later down the line. And with that, we're at the end of Level 2. Oh boy, I sure hope Level 3 starts with a very nice and normal first entry. Fozzie Bear's Ghost. Alright, so the battle level chamber has these pictures all over the walls. There's some weird portraits of ghosts, as well as Statler and Waldorf. This is inspired by the Marley and Marley scene from Christmas Carol, so yeah, that makes sense. But one of these portraits has always bothered me. This one, that appears to be a ghostly Fozzie Bear. And I don't just mean that it kinda looks like Fozzie. I mean, this is Fozzie's promotional stock photo, but they've made it kinda blue and cut the ears off. This really creeped me out as a kid, but now, it's kinda awesome that they made this. Marley and Marley. Statler and Waldorf have a big presence in RaceMania. They have jokes making fun of every level in the game, and have some lines after races for winning and losing.
This is the scariest part of this race.
The graveyard?
No, the drivers. Oh!
Statler and Waldorf appear as boss characters on the chamber level. Kind of. They're here as Marley and Marley, so they're ghosts instead of the normal Statler and Waldorf. But the game doesn't call them Jacob and Robert Marley either, instead calling them Statler Marley and Waldorf Marley, which is just sort of a weird middle ground. These are the only characters in the game in character as other characters. Unused voice lines. Speaking of Statler and Waldorf, they actually have a handful of voice lines in the game that go unused. They reference roles on the development team and even a few people who worked on the game, so it's assumed they were meant to play during the credits. But in the final game, it just plays music over the credits instead. Here's a couple examples.
An associate producer.
I'm surprised anyone would associate with this game. Oh!
Project manager.
Yeah, they managed to ruin the project.
Oh! That James Dillon has a nice credit.
Why?
Because it's near the end. Oh!
All of these unused voice clips are compiled on the cutting room floor. If you want to hear the rest of these, I'll have a link in the description. Muppet Performers. Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets and performer for several, passed away in the year 1990. Another of the main Muppet performers, Richard Hunt, passed away shortly after in 1992. So during this era, a lot of the characters that these two performed weren't showing up in Muppets projects, and if they did, they were only showing up in the background without any dialogue. Muppet RaceMania being one of the exceptions. Matt Vogel, the current-day performer for Kermit the Frog and Deadly, voiced Richard Hunt's characters Scooter and Janice, marking the only time he would ever officially voice these characters. The game also marked the first time since Jim's passing that Link Hogthrob would speak, and was the first time Steve Whitmire, then performer for Kermit, Rizzo, Bean, and others, would perform the character. This was also one of the final times Frank Oz, performer for Fozzie, Piggy, and several others, would play these characters, starting to distance himself from Muppets projects the following year. For being a random Muppet racing spin-off game in 2000, RaceMania has some surprisingly noteworthy performances. Speedway music. As I mentioned before, the levels in The End reuse a bunch of assets and music from already existing levels, with one exception. The music that plays on Speedway only plays on Speedway, and this is the only level from The End to have unique music. It's also the only song in the game that does not play on one of the main levels in the game. Every stage in the main game has its own unique music, except Theater and Arches, which both have the Muppet Show theme tune. So I almost wonder if the Speedway music was meant to play in the theater, but since it didn't really fit, they just moved it here? I don't have any evidence backing this up, other than it's kinda weird. Did they repurpose music intended for something else? Or did they want to make unique music for one level in The End and no others? We may never know the answer. The Gorgs. Like Flange Doozer, the Gorgs that appear on Fraggle Rock are actually specific characters. These are Ma, Pa, and Junior. It's a little hard to tell when racing normally, these just look like terrifying faces popping out of the corner of your eye. We know for certain that these are meant to be these specific characters, because in the European version, all of the Muppet characters get their names in the credits, including characters like these three who just make minor cameos. Regional differences. There's a bunch of other weird differences between regional versions of the game, too. Some of these are just weird, like menu text being positioned slightly differently, or the course select screen being a different color in the background. The European version doesn't show you what the characters look like on the select screen, it's just a text list. Whereas the US version gives you a full look at the characters and their vehicles. The US version also shows icons for every character in the level at the beginning, the EU version does not. A lot of these are very small changes, but I do think they make for an overall better experience. Level sketches. There was an old site called Gus World that had a really great guide of Muppet RaceMania, as well as some extra info on the game. The website rebranded somewhat recently as anguskidman.show, but the Muppet RaceMania guide is still on here. I highly recommend checking this out, there's lots of cool stuff here. One of those cool things being these sketches of a handful of levels drawn by the developers when designing them. There's a couple neat 3D overhead looks at the levels too. These were apparently up on the Traveler's Tales website around the time of the game's release, but have since been removed. So thanks Gus World for preserving these. Cinematic trailer. During the promotional cycle for this game, commercials and trailers feature this cool animated cinematic. This isn't in the game at all, this was only used for advertising. If you have any Muppets or Bear in the Big Blue House VHS tapes from 2001, you probably saw it there. Muppet RaceMania x NASCAR. On Getty Images, you can find a collection of photos from a press conference where the Jim Henson Company came together with NASCAR to announce the upcoming Muppet RaceMania video game. This press conference never existed. These photos are actually from an event that took place in 2002, where Muppets and NASCAR did a big merchandising collaboration. They made a bunch of Muppet-themed toy cars. So this was a real event, but it took place a couple of years after RaceMania. I don't know why they're listed like this. LEGO Star Wars Grapes. Aside from Muppet RaceMania, Traveler's Tales developed a bunch of other games, but the series they became the most known for was the LEGO series, starting with LEGO Star Wars the video game in 2005. LEGO Star Wars 2 and LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, which combines the first two games, feature a very bizarre Easter egg. The first level of A New Hope, Secret Plans, hidden inside a breakable wall, is this strange block, featuring the Grapes collectible from Muppet RaceMania? If you find all three of them in the level, you get a mini-kit, one of the game's main collectibles. 3 Grapes appear again in a later level, Death Star Escape. This is such a weird and funny Easter egg to one of Traveler's Tales' past titles. I found 10 people who are credited on both Muppet RaceMania and LEGO Star Wars 2. One of these people hid the Muppet Grapes in this game, and I can't thank them enough, whoever it was. There's been a lot of confusion among LEGO Star Wars players. Lots of posts asking what's up with the grapes? Because these don't really look like anything from Star Wars, but they do kind of fit a LEGO game. They even appear in the Nintendo DS version. They look a little bit different. They actually fully remade the Grapes image for this game, which is super cool. I'm honestly kind of surprised they kept this, though they sadly do not appear in the Game Boy Advance version. But now we have to ask the real question. Do the Muppet RaceMania Grapes appear on the DVD version of the original Star Wars? Hear me out. In the special features, all 3 movies in the trilogy feature a demo for LEGO Star Wars 2, and if the demo happens to feature either of these levels, then the Muppet RaceMania Grapes can officially appear on a Star Wars DVD. Now, there's not a lot of info about the demos online, and I needed to know for sure. So to find out, I had to buy an original Xbox to test these. And sadly, neither of these levels are featured, but at least we know for sure, right? Sweetums is too big. The Muppets characters come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and RaceMania captures that pretty well. Characters like Bean, Pepe, Robin, Sal, Rizzo, and Doozer are all tiny little guys, and the same can be said for the boss character Sweetums, who feels as giant as he should be. But this comes with a pretty funny side effect. The only level he can appear on, Canyon, has this tunnel leading into a separate area. It's mainly for hiding adventure mode items, but in battle mode, it's a good place to rest. Other racers don't come in here too often. Especially if one of those racers happens to be Sweetums, who is so big that he literally cannot fit into the tunnel. So if you need to escape from him, you can just hide out in this room, throw a couple items when he gets close, and tuck yourself back in. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it's pretty funny that Canyon's special boss character has a huge disadvantage on their own level. CPUs won't enter paintings. There are some other funny ways to avoid combat in the battle mode, at least against computer opponents. One of my personal favorites is in the level Mallory Gallery from the Great Muppet Caper. This is a racetrack, but you can unlock battle mode on any race level, which oftentimes doesn't work so well. These are just way too big, especially with the adventure mode areas. In Mallory Gallery, you can enter these paintings to find some secrets in adventure mode. You can enter them in regular gameplay too. Some act as shortcuts, but this giant gray room in particular doesn't serve much purpose in races. It's just a dead end. However, in battle mode, computer opponents will never enter this room. They can enter it. Every playable character has the ability to get in here, but CPUs just don't. You can sit in this little window and just spectate the carnage, or grab items to toss them out the window. A bunch of race levels have areas like this in battle mode, but this painting room is my personal favorite. Mysterious buzzing. A few of the game's characters, Bobo, Pepe, and the Swedish Chef, all have a loud buzzing sound in the background during all of their lines. Here, I'll let you have a listen.
Pick me. Yeah. Pick me, okay? I'm the one to pick, okay? Very handsome, okay? Pick me, come on. What are you waiting for, okay? Pick me.
Fernie Piggy. Piggy. Piggy's Fernie do. Fernie do the Piggy. Fernie Piggy. Piggy to me. Piggy's Fernie.
All 3 of these characters have one thing in common. They're all voiced by Muppet performer Bill Beretta. And I guess something went wrong with the recording when they did their lines. And, you know, we've all been there. Interestingly, though, they also voiced Johnny Fiamma, who doesn't have a buzzing sound.
You know, if you race with me, you're gonna win. Simple.
So I guess this one in particular was recorded separately from the other 3. Very strange. Missing and extra portraits. Aside from the very first loading screen when starting the game, you know, the one with the long stretching beaker, all of the game's loading screens are stock images of the Muppets characters over checkered backgrounds. And there's one for almost every single playable character in the game. Johnny, Fiamma, Sal, and Bean sadly didn't get one. Which is kinda weird, considering Camilla the chicken got one, who isn't playable. Chickens are just items in the game. Statler and Waldorf also got one, which makes a little more sense. Muppet movie posters. The battle stage, Trafalgar Square, has a lot of really cool details around it. Several of those loading screen portraits appear in the tunnels. There's also this image of Miss Piggy. The other images down here look the same except for this. But my favorite background detail here are these posters from a couple Muppet movies. Not The Great Muppet Caper, the movie this level's based on, but Muppets Take Manhattan and Muppets from Space. It's a cool Easter egg. Also, did you know that Trafalgar Square is a real place in England? Yeah, the Queen was such a big fan of Muppet RaceMania that she turned her two favorite levels, Trafalgar Square and Old London Town, into actual locations in England. I'm kidding, of course. The Queen hated this game, but as a kid, I never knew this was actually a real place. I thought they just made it up for the Muppets. Oops. Special move names. So all of the main playable characters have a special move. When they get enough fruit to fill their meter, they can either turn into a star that flies them through the level, or hit everybody with their special. Kermit throws everyone onto a lily pad, Rizzo turns everyone into cheese, Link freezes everybody in a block of ice. They're unique ways for each Muppet to stop everyone for a moment. Each of these unique special moves has a unique name, they're just never stated in-game. A couple of them are in the manual, but the rest could only be seen on racemania.net, the game's old official website. Kermit has the lily pad, Fozzie has tomato splat, Rizzo has mini cheese, Clifford has cool dude, Doozer has tiny tornado. I'll leave a link to the archive of racemania.net if you want to look through these. Early and cut items. In various screenshots and gameplay trailers before the game's release, there were a number of changes that looked a little different, including some of the items. The fish in the final release looks like a somewhat realistic PS1 fish, but the original was a lot more cartoony looking, and its original look is actually how it appears in the game's manual. The beta chicken was front-facing, which is really weird. The penguin looks more or less the same, and the bomb, as far as I can tell, wasn't changed at all. There's also this pink blob that doesn't appear in the final game. My first thought was bubblegum. Scooter's special move sticks players to the ground, so maybe this was originally intended as an item? This missile item also doesn't appear in the final game, but I've got no ideas for this one. So, editor's note, while I've been working on this iceberg, I found the Planet PlayStation magazine covering Muppet RaceMania with a first look at a lot of the beta content. A lot of the stuff that I've already mentioned is in here, but there's also some other kind of weird stuff. There's like a Kermit head on a star. It has these listed with other items in the game, so I'm assuming this was an item, but it doesn't say what it is. It just says, oh my god, a Kermit head. So this could have been anything. I really don't know. Johnny Fiamma's car. Keeping on topic with the game's beta, some of the characters' cars are a little different. In the final game, any Muppet can use any other car, but they all have their signature vehicle. In a lot of this beta footage, a good number of characters can be seen driving what would eventually become Johnny Fiamma's car in the final release. It's possible this was used as a default vehicle for characters who didn't have their vehicles built into the game yet, but it's really interesting just how many of them use specifically Johnny Fiamma's car. And a few characters drive vehicles that don't appear in the final release at all, like this red car Fozzie drives, or this yellow one that Scooter has. Another really interesting detail is the cars that Beaker and Bunsen use are actually each other's defaults in the final game, meaning they could have originally had these swapped. In fact, in the cinematic trailer, Bunsen is seen driving Beaker's car, and later in the trailer, Beaker is seen in Bunsen's, so yeah, I'm actually extremely confident that this was the original plan. Editor Tad reading Planet PlayStation magazine back again. This actually gives us more concrete confirmation that this was actually the case. So we have some screenshots in here, Beaker in the hovercraft, Bunsen Honeydew in like the little moon rover thing, and the text on here says, Beaker's hovercraft is perfect for the slippery-based water tracks, meaning that this was just Beaker's default car in the beginning. I don't know why they switched to these, but yeah, that's kinda neat. Andy and Randy Pig. Andy and Randy Pig are Miss Piggy's nephews, their most notable appearance being from The Muppets Tonight. They never appear physically in Muppet RaceMania, but they do get a mention in the game's credits. As I mentioned earlier with the Gorgs, every Muppet who appears in the game, whether they're playable or a cameo, is listed in the European version of the game's credits. But a couple who don't appear also make it in. Andy and Randy Pig are credited for catering, implying that the food that you collect all over the stages were actually provided by these two. New Zealand provided the fish items, Crazy Harry provided the penguins and presumably the bombs, and of course Camilla provided the chickens. Even though these Muppets aren't playable, I love that they contextualized all of these gameplay elements through these characters. It feels like the Muppets themselves made this game. Implied New Zealand lore. To end off level 4, here's a silly one, as if the rest of this hasn't been silly. New Zealand is the game's fish supplier, obviously. His whole thing is his iconic boomerang fish act, where the fish he throws return to him like a boomerang. In RaceMania, however, the fish item doesn't work like this at all. It shoots forward in a straight line, and that's it. I love the implication that the fish aren't special in the slightest. These are just normal fish. They only boomerang when thrown by New Zealand himself, because he's just that good at throwing fish. A lot of the Muppets are funny because they're really bad at, like, their main thing. In The Muppet Show, everyone hates Fozzie's jokes, and we love him for that. But Lou gets to be the exception. This guy, of all characters, by some miracle, is the most legitimately talented Muppet. And still none of the other Muppets appreciate him. Flying Sam. I always thought the game's box art was strange as a kid. They all make sense to be right there on the cover. These are some of the most popular characters, but why is Sam the eagle here? Don't get me wrong, I like Sam a lot, but he doesn't have a huge presence in most of the movies that the game's based on. And I mean, even in the game, he's a hidden, unlockable character. Also, why is his plane flying when it's grounded in-game? Well, in pre-release footage, Sam's plane could actually fly. In the beta, he's not stuck to the ground like everyone else. I imagine this was inspired by Diddy Kong Racing, where you could pick planes and fly through the level, but yeah, this didn't make it into the final game. None of the levels really seem built with flying in mind, so maybe they thought planes were too overpowered, or maybe they thought it would be weird if only this one character's vehicle could fly. It's also possible that they tried the idea, but scrapped it very early in development, and if that is the case, it's interesting that so many leftovers from the idea are still left in the game. Aside from the most obvious one, Sam flying on the cover, there's also a special dogfight mode that puts every character in planes. This always confused me, because it's just a normal battle mode, just with every character in the same vehicle. But with the context of what this mode was probably going to be originally, its inclusion makes a lot more sense. It's wild that we almost got a version of this game where Sam is just the best character by far. The animal reflection. Reflective objects in early 3D games are really neat, because a lot of them would just use the same texture to give it a reflection effect. Like in Super Mario 64, Metal Mario just uses this photo of some flowers to make it appear reflective. In Muppet RaceMania, they use the game's box art for reflective surfaces. The easiest way to notice this is on some of the close-up tokens on the level select. Animal's big face really stands out here. You can get a good look on Kermit's car in the credits as well. Fountain flipping. Remember Trafalgar Square from earlier? The level has these fountains that you can drive through, and, well, they seem pretty normal, right? Most characters can go through this perfectly fine. But if you're playing a character with a vehicle that can hover, like Gonzo, Honeydew, or Link, there's a weird bug where going into this fountain will flip your character upside down. You can still drive, you can still throw items and take damage, you can even jump, and you'll still show as being upside down for a moment until you land. Computer opponents will still find and attack you, but it might be a good hiding spot against a friend. Broken stool. On the stunt level Diner, there's this stool towards the end that you can drive completely through. I tried every other stool on this level. This is the only one that's for some reason broken. If you try to jump while inside the stool, it'll just move you on top of it. I found this one on the cutting room floor. I was bad at the stunt levels as a kid, so I never actually knew about this one. Again, link in the description if you want to see more stuff like this. Skybox changes. Another interesting thing in the beta footage are the slight changes to how some of the levels look, more specifically in their skies. A couple levels that take place during the day have dark night skies in early footage. It's possible they just didn't have a skybox and left it black. Studio has a black sky in the final game, like it's meant to be indoors, but originally had this purple-orange sky. Beta character models. Alright, this is the last entry relating to the beta footage. A few Muppets look kinda different in the final release. Miss Piggy's hair was originally a lot more yellow. Gonzo looked closer to his appearance in the original Muppet Show with his more tired eyes. Kermit was also a lot taller and just looked kinda strange. He's a little creepy here. Crash Bandicoot Hub. Alright, it's time for more blind speculation. Going back to the game's cinematic trailer, Kermit drops into this room featuring doors labeled after the 6 Muppet movies featured in the game. He looks through them for a moment before driving into one. This area is shown a few times, with the Muppets driving back and forth through here. The setup reminds me a lot of something like the level select hub from some of the Crash Bandicoot PS1 games. A circular room with tunnels leading towards the different levels. I don't know if originally they wanted to have a level select like that, or if the grid that we got was the plan from the beginning, but it's still pretty neat to think about. Animal's perfect English. We all know Animal, we all love Animal, and we all know his very distinct method of communication.
Animal!
As mentioned previously, throughout the game's instruction booklet, it's written from the perspective of the Muppets. It feels really accurate to how they'd talk, it's great. And then on the second to last page, with the cheat codes, Animal finally gets to speak. Well, here's a first. We're giving you the codes to cheat, but be honest now. Try playing the game without them first. Animal would not say that. The book is otherwise so authentic. Why does Animal speak like this at the very end of it? The only explanation that makes sense in my mind is that somebody accidentally put the wrong picture here and this was supposed to be a different character. I don't know. It's weird. Muppet Vision 3D. Muppet Vision 3D was an attraction featured at various Disney theme parks. The Disney World Hollywood Studios version was open from 1991 to 2025, and the Disneyland California Adventures location was around from 2001 to 2014. This was a 3D movie played within a recreation of the Muppets Theater. It was like seeing a live version of the Muppet Show, complete with characters appearing on the stage and in the balcony. So, why are we talking about this? Well, believe it or not, there's an odd little tie to RaceMania. It's a huge stretch, it's basically nothing, it definitely wasn't intentional, but I think it's kinda neat. So, you know those portraits featured on the loading screens? They all use promotional stock images and feature close-ups of their faces. Inside the entrance of Muppet Vision 3D, there's extremely similar portraits. A bunch of these actually use the exact same stock art of the characters. I don't know if these have been up since the opening in '91. The furthest back I can find is them being up in like 2010, 2011. RaceMania absolutely did not intentionally reference the Muppet Vision line. That's too much of a reach even for me. I just think it's a fun coincidence. Muppet Vision 3D may be gone, but at least we can sit in this particular hallway and pretend we're still lining up for it. Fan remake. Before we move on to the final level, there's a couple of fan-made RaceMania related projects I want to talk about. This game's pretty obscure, so what little fan content exists is really interesting to me. In November of 2020, the YouTube channel Tactagara posted the video Muppet RaceMania Remake Project, showing their attempt at recreating the game. There's a few other videos showing off more. There's 4 playable Muppets, Kermit, Piggy, Gonzo, and Beaker. and 2 levels, Swamp and Studio. Obviously, this was far off from looking or playing like the actual game, but there's a surprising amount that was implemented here. Fruits, boosting, the star power, even all the items. It actually looks a lot like the pre-release trailer for the game, which is really cool. There haven't been any updates since November of 2020, so I'd assume that the project is no longer in development. Maybe someday someone will actually make a full-on remake to this game. Muppet Swamp. Muppet Swamp is a video uploaded on August 4th, 2008 by Electro Andre. The video is the music from the RaceMania level Swamp, accompanied by Muppets GIFs. I think meant to look like they're playing the music from the game, but then there's some pretty random GIFs thrown in there too. I love this video, but I always thought it was a little eerie. It's a video from 2008 with low quality 240p GIFs, and just the unnatural way some of them move, combined with the already eerie swamp music, it's just like, I don't know, uncomfortable. But in a fun way, I don't know. Electro Andre has uploaded a few other Muppet RaceMania music videos, most of them just using Muppet-related images instead of GIFs, with the exception of Muppet Remix. This one goes back to using the strange GIFs, but instead of one song, it plays a bunch of them for roughly 10 seconds. This one also doesn't mention RaceMania anywhere, it's just called Muppet Remix. Anyway, I just found these videos interesting back in the day. Electro Andre hasn't uploaded since 2010, but hopefully they'll come back to us someday. And with that, we move on to level 6, the very bottom of the iceberg. Boss special moves. A little while ago, I talked about how every character's special moves are listed on the RaceMania website. What I didn't mention before is that it also lists the special moves for each of the boss characters. You might be wondering why that's so significant. Well, the boss characters don't actually have special moves in-game. When the meter fills up, pressing the special button doesn't do a thing. But according to the website, at some point they actually had moves. Beauregard had Dodgy Driver, Bill, Jill, and Gil had Boredom, Marley and Marley had Frightener, and Dr. Van Neuter had Time Twister. Sweetums and Pig Chief don't appear on the website, and Beauregard doesn't really tell us what his actually would have done. Bill, Gil, and Jill's Boredom would have put players to sleep, and the Marley's Frightener would have rattled your chains, whatever that means. Van Neuter's Time Twister will take you back in time to when he was winning and you were losing. Not really sure how that one would have worked either. Missing Faces. Each level starts with a movie clip giving you context for what the level was based on. These movie clips are very focused on the Muppets, and for the most part, don't show human characters at all. And like, obviously, it's a Muppets game, but there are some interesting workarounds to actually avoid showing humans. There aren't clips where we actually get to see levels like Mallory Gallery or Cape Doom. Instead, we have clips of Muppet characters talking about these places while somewhere else. When so many of these show us the exact level inspiration, these ones where they just talk about it feel a little weird. This is especially noticeable with Christmas Carol and Treasure Island, the two movies where human actors play the main characters. The only clip they can use to represent Graveyard is a few seconds of Gonzo and Rizzo ringing a bell. The closest we get is the back of Michael Caine's head in Chamber. This game didn't have the budget to show his face. You can see a couple out-of-focus background faces during a couple clips, but the only proper human face to appear in this entire game is this doctor clip. This is it. This is the only in-focus human face. Where is Canyon? A couple movie clips really don't give context at all. This is mostly seen in the bonus stages. They didn't get Muppet Show or Fraggle Rock clips for those. But Canyon from the Muppet movie is a strange case. The clip shows Kermit and Fozzie in the car falling asleep, and in the context of the movie, this is what their current area looks like. And then in-game, it's a desert level that looks a lot like Ghost Town, which always struck me as odd. I don't know why they didn't use another clip from the desert part of the movie. Canyon is the only one of the non-secret levels that really doesn't feel like it was based on anything in particular, though it is still a really fun level. Gonzo's shirt. In RaceMania, Gonzo wears a red shirt with a yellow stripe. This is actually what my little avatar character wears, and I was going to make a joke that Gonzo stole my fit, But then I started thinking, why is Gonzo wearing this? The outfits worn by the Muppet characters are generally their default outfits, the thing they'd wear in promotional stock photos, the outfit they're most associated with. Or in Bobo's specific case, the suit he wears in Muppets from Space, his only significant movie appearance up to that point. When has Gonzo ever worn this? I spent a while looking around trying to find it, and as it turns out, Gonzo wears a lot of red and yellow. There's his classic yellow shirt with the red peppers, his stuntman gear with a yellow shirt and red cape. As Charles Dickens, he's got a red coat and yellow shirt. Even in Muppet Babies, red and yellow. Sadly, I couldn't find this particular shirt. But as it turns out, originally this wasn't even going to be his outfit in the game. In the cinematic trailer, he was wearing his classic red suit. And it looks like he was wearing this in-game, too. This makes sense. It's probably the look he's most known for. But somewhere along the way, it turned into this. It always comes back to red and yellow with this guy. Don't listen to Rolf. In the instruction booklet, Kermit the Frog says, "Some screenshots may have been taken from pre-completion screens that differ slightly from those in the finished game." Basically meaning there might be some beta pre-release stuff in these screenshots. And there is. There's exactly one screenshot in the manual on a page showing you what all of the icons and text on screen mean, and they paired it with the most ironic dialogue from Rolf the dog. "This is what your game screen should look like. If not, then you're playing the wrong game." Meanwhile, the screenshot shows old UI and the rocket item that doesn't appear in the game. This is unintentional, I'm sure, but extremely funny. 12 diverse game modes. The very first entry on this iceberg was 3 game modes. Well, just kidding, I'm a liar. The back of the game boasts 12 diverse game modes, and I'm gonna be real, I don't know what they're talking about, but let's try and figure it out. Race, Stunt, and Battle are the easy 3. The blurb on the back also mentions Adventure, so we'll include that. Adding in bonus unlockable modes on levels, add in Battle Race, Reverse Race, Dogfight, Chicken Chase, and Boss Battle, that's up to 9. We can count the ends overhead levels, and you can count Tournament, but that only makes 11. Do you count the ends races and battles as 2 separate modes? But then, if you do that, you'd have to count the separate race and battle tournaments, and then that puts us over 12. But if we count the end as 1 and tournament as 1, then we still need 1 more. But the answer's right in front of us. The box mentions another mode that I haven't listed yet. The 12th diverse game mode in Muppet RaceMania is turning on the Dr. Strange Pork Smart Steering functionality. Huh? This is something you can turn off and on freely during a race. This is a feature of the game, but in what world is it its own game mode? This is like saying selecting Bean Bunny on the character select is its own game mode, or using the penguin item in a race is its own game mode. Okay, we're ignoring what the box says, the box is a liar. I'm going to call Meet the Muppets the 12th diverse game mode. This is essentially a training mode, where you can try out each vehicle on different terrains, and that makes a whole lot more sense in my mind. But actually, even with that, we still go over, because I neglected to mention Doozer Battle, where everyone plays as a Doozer, so I give up. Actual Star. When you get enough fruit and fill up your meter, you can either use a special move to hit all players, or turn into this light that flies you through a level, making you immune to attacks. So what is this thing supposed to be? I mean, think about it. Everything in this game is so Muppety. The items, the pickups, even the smart steering mode, all of that is themed around this world and its characters. What's this random ball of light doing here? As a kid, we called this the Actual Star. I don't know why we called it that, but that's just what it was called. The official name is the Mega Boost, according to the manual. This seems like just a generic video gamey power-up, but what if I told you that even this is a reference to something Muppet related? Hear me out on this one. Go watch any old Muppets or Jim Henson production, and you'll be greeted with this logo. Yes, the true identity of the actual star is the little blue light that turns into the dot on the eye in the Jim Henson Company intro. I know this sounds like a reach, but continue to hear me out. The Jim Henson interactive logo used for the Muppets games features a very similar intro. On the RaceMania version of this intro, you can hear Gonzo's voice moving with the blue light, kinda like Gonzo's using the actual star here. This seems like a really out there reference, but with the amount of insane deep cuts this game has, I honestly don't think it's too far-fetched of a theory. If this was intentional, then this is the coolest thing ever, and this truly is the greatest video game ever made. Strange statue. We keep coming back to this one. I wish there was more to say about some of the other levels. New York City has the Manhattan Melodies logo on this building. That's a cool reference, but Trafalgar Square just has too much weird stuff going on. This time, we're talking about statues. There's a pretty cool Kermit the Frog statue here, but who is this? It looks different from every angle. From way back here, I thought this looked like this blue guy, but from up close, it looks more like Rizzo or a kangaroo. But from here, its body goes down like it's a larger creature laying down. And actually, the real Trafalgar Square has these giant lion statues that I think these might be referencing, but these don't really look like lions. Maybe they are just giant rats? I don't know. The New Zealand Conspiracy. Here we are at the final entry on this list. I saved what I think is the most interesting, at least to me, for last. RaceMania has some really bizarre mysteries that, isolated, really don't make sense. But considering all of these oddities together, may allude to the possibility that the character of New Zealand was originally planned to be playable, but was scrapped very early into the game's development. I say very early in development because there's nothing in any of our beta footage hinting about New Zealand. If he was planned, there was a solid chance he was cut before they even started working on him. Of all the levels in Muppet RaceMania, excluding bonus levels, there are only 2 in the entire game that do not have a character associated with them. All of the battle levels have their bosses, all of the stunts have unlockable characters, and all but 2 of the races. You can kind of accept Ghost Town as being empty because it is a ghost town, but it's really weird that Central Park wouldn't have a character. And hey, it's from Muppets Take Manhattan, the movie that most prominently features New Zealand of these 6. And do you remember what I said before? They would try to fit characters onto levels from movies that they had the biggest role in. But also, do you remember those loading screen images that almost every playable character has? New Zealand also had one of those. This does not appear in the final game, but was at one point on the Traveler's Tales website. Now, you could debunk this theory by saying Statler and Waldorf, as well as Camilla, also have loading screens in-game. Statler and Waldorf have unique narration on every level and have a big presence throughout RaceMania, and Camilla's there because chickens make a physical appearance, being one of the 4 items. You could argue New Zealand is here because he's in the credits as the fish supplier, but Crazy Harry, Andy, and Randy didn't have these images. It would be weird to single out Lou, especially if this random loading screen was the only place his face appeared in the entire game. But here's the big one. His face actually does randomly appear in only one place in the entire game. While his loading screens do not appear in the game, that same image does. Like Trafalgar Square, the level Theater has more of those portraits on the walls, and despite not being playable, New Zealand's image is up there 3 times. Statler, Waldorf, and Camilla's portraits don't appear anywhere on these 2 stages, only playable characters and New Zealand. Why we were deprived of funny boomerang fishman, I don't know, but it does seem extremely likely, at least to me, that he was at one point planned to make an appearance.